receive from us during your time in college. And I will give you a clue as to what that is in 2 words. Fruitful and satisfied. By the time you leave college, we want to prepare you to be able to have a fruitful and satisfied life. Okay? So a few weeks ago, I had Jim Downing on my campus, which is a huge privilege. And I asked Jim, for the benefit of my students, Jim, what's the secret to joy in your life? And Jim always has an acronym for everything. And I think I probably benefited more from it than they did. Jim gave me 4 Ds. Discover your gift, develop your gift, dedicate your gift, and deploy your gift. Right? So, I'll say that again. Develop your gift, or discover your gift, develop your gift, dedicate your gift, and deploy your gift. That's not even that important. I mean, awesome, write that down. But what I want you to hear from that is that a 103-year-old man thinks the secret to joy is contributing yourself to the advancement of the kingdom by dedicating your gifting to the king. For the king, on behalf of the king, out of the love that you have for the king, right? The theme for the summer is King and Kingdom. Yeah. And that's what I want to talk to you guys about today, is living a fruitful and satisfying life, giving your giftings to the Lord. Alex, go ahead and pass that out face down. And I would like for you guys to define in your own words for yourself 3 things. The first word is calling. The second word is vocation. And the third word is work. Calling, vocation, and work. The only reason I'm asking you to do this is because I want you to see how accurate your understanding of these things are by the time we're done. Because that's my whole goal, is to define these 3 things for you. Calling, vocation, and work. Let's flip your page over and flip to the second page, actually. We'll come back to the first page in a minute. The back of the first page, sorry, the back of the first page. Page 2. That one, the one that's not the diamond. Second page.
On the back of the diamond.
On the back of the diamond, the one that's not the diamond.
On the back of the diamond.
Okay, so let's talk about the call of God. At your tables, I want you all to pick one of those verses collectively and read it. And see what light that sheds on what God has called us to. No. There should be verses listed out on your page. Just pick one of the verses that's at the top of the page to read as a group. Tell me what you learned about what the Lord has called us to from this table really quick.
That's right. Right, so we're just called to stay in Him, like to be with Him, to be in Him.
To be with Him, to be in Him, great. How about the Psalm 34:8 table, since I directed you guys to the wrong place? What does that say about what God's called us to?
So like, one, not only experientially, it says taste and see, so it's like actually, like when you taste something, you're eating it, you're not just like, you're swallowing it. But then also, like Logan said, I'm also called to take refuge in Him. And that's like part of the calling.
How about Matthew 22, 36 to 40? Anybody do that one? You probably know it off the top of your head.
Everyone's called to two things. Number one is to love God with all your heart, soul, mind, strength, and body. And then the other one is to love your neighbor as yourself. So if you're doing something outside of those two laws, you're not really as called.
Right. So on the front page, there's a little picture here. And in our illustration, the full calling of God to everyone is that you're in relationship with Him. Whether you know it or not, when you came to know Jesus, God called you into a relationship with Himself. He knows you by name. No matter where you are after college, no matter whether you have a job or you're unemployed, no matter if you're a college student or you're a grandpa, the call of God in your life is to seek His face, to love Him and experience Him for all of your days. Unquestionable. That's a call of God on your life. And everything else in your life should fit into that calling and that pursuit for the rest of your days. Does that make sense? A lot of times when people hear the word calling, they think, oh, I'm called to be a missionary. That is a calling. Or I'm called to be a dentist. Like, that's a calling. But there's so much broader of a calling on their life. And this is the number one calling to every person. So here's another question. So back to the page that you just were. We're going to be flipping back and forth, sorry. What is conviction? So in the space under those questions, or under the verses, write down what you think conviction is. Conviction is a belief held so tightly that it affects your life. It affects all of your choices. That's just a simple definition. There's much smarter and better ones out there than that. But I like simple. Sometimes. All the decisions that you'll make for the rest of your days will be made out of your convictions. So when you graduate, your beliefs will hold you to your convictions. So a conviction that you believe that God has you where He wants you. Whether you're working as an intern with really little pay and a non-satisfying job, or you're unemployed, or you're working at Google, and you're working 70 hours a week, you're dog-tired, do you really believe that God is sovereign and that He's placed you where He wants you? Your convictions are going to hold you to whether you prioritize time to relationally engage with the God of the universe every day. Your convictions are going to form how you spend your money, how you invest your money, if and when you give your money. Your convictions are going to hold you to whether you interact with the lost and have lost friends, whether you have believing friends, whether you get involved in a church or a small group, what kind of person you're going to date and marry if you're not already dating or married, which I imagine none of you are, but you could be. Your convictions on drinking and partying. Your convictions on what music you listen to. I don't know. I don't really have strong convictions about that. But you could, and that would be good. Your convictions on the integrity of the work that you do in the workplace. and what kind of worker you'll be in general. All of those beliefs should come under this umbrella of your calling and relationship, your calling to a relationship with the Lord. And my hope for you is that your convictions lead you to a fruitful and satisfying life in your pursuit of Him. So, to recap that, the illustration of those diamonds, everything in your life should encapsulate that top calling of a relationship with the Lord. Every facet, every decision that you make should be filtered through that calling. And that's why you have a heart-pounding drive to be satisfied in Him, whether you know it or not. Let's move down on that back page there, the second one, under the diamond. And let's talk about called to contribute. Okay? So I asked you to define the word vocation. Here's an actual working definition of vocation. And there is great confusion about this word. America has changed what this word means. And I kind of want to help you redeem it a little bit. Because a vocation is not your job. Okay? This is what a vocation is. Our divinely given life purpose. Your divinely given life purpose. So that's the definition. But it should embrace all dimensions of your human existence. All dimensions. Including, but not limited to, your occupation. But also things that we do outside of work. So vocation doesn't necessarily, it's not confined to what you do for a living. It should go beyond what you do for a living to things outside the workplace. See, we've compartmentalized that word to where my vocation is what I do. I'm a dentist. That's my vocation. Actually, that's your job. Hopefully there's more to your life than just your job. It should be a lifestyle of participating with God and His redemptive plan for the world. It is more than your occupation. It's your gifting. It's your experience. It's your interests. It's your passions. And it's God's calling converging in your life to influence His creation around you. So here's an example from my own life. My calling is to know the Lord and love Him all of my days. And then within that calling, my vocation and how I contribute to His kingdom is I'm passionate about making disciples. I'm passionate about the nations. I'm also passionate about business. I really like entrepreneurial things. Entrepreneurial things? Preneurial? Can't talk apparently. Must not like it that much. I can't say the word. But in my job, I only do maybe one or two of those three things. My job doesn't fill all of my vocational calling. And neither will yours. So much of our contributions will be very unique to each and every one of you. How you contribute to God's kingdom is going to be how God has uniquely designed you and what you're gifted at. But I want to hone in on one piece of your contribution and something that all believers are called to. And that's the Great Commission. It's the commission to all believers, right? Now, you probably all... Who has memorized Matthew 28:18-20? It's okay. It's okay to like say, hey, I've done something. That's helpful for me. Now, who's memorized the other ones? None of you. Great! So that's what we're going to do right now. Not memorize, but we're going to look at the other ones. Maybe not all 4. Let's do 2. So at your tables right now, let's look at Luke 24:48 or 44 to 48 and John 20:19 to 21. Read them together, and as you're reading it, answer this question. Does anything new stand out to you from these passages about your involvement with God? It's just what's new to you from those passages?
A really good reminder of just how dependent we are on the Lord. Like, we can't even understand the scriptures apart from Him. How can we expect ourselves to go out and not be dependent upon Him as well?
Cool. I don't think I know anybody at this table by name. What's your name?
Thomas.
Thomas.
Yeah.
What were some of the things you guys talked about? What were?
Yeah. Well, one of the things that we noticed is like we are witnesses, so just like what we've seen and heard God do, that's what we can share. Oh yeah, we're sent, and not just like to a specific place, but all the world. So it's gonna be different for other people because there's lots of places.
You guys were talking about Jerusalem. I was intercoming to gauge time.
Oh right. Oh yeah.
What,
And we also noticed
what was one of your thoughts on that?
Like it starts at home where you're at right now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, the commission was for where they were at right then. What they were doing right then. It started in Jerusalem. So the commission for you is right now. And after you graduate, with whatever you do, it'll be where you're at. And that is a commission to everybody. That is a vocational call to everyone. God wants His people to be passionate about this in every context of life, without any excuses. And you all know that to be true because your heart burns to be a part of it. I've never met a believer that told me, I kind of wish I influenced people. No, every single believer I've ever talked to wishes they influenced the people around them. They just might not necessarily know how. And the reason for that is because God has put that call in everyone's hearts. Would you guys say it's a conviction to hold to your calling, to contribute to God's kingdom through the Great Commission? Is that a conviction of yours? Is this something that's going to be unwavering after you graduate in whatever context, no matter what the obstacle? Because living out the Great Commission will look different after college. Sometimes it's going to be slower. And when I say sometimes, I mean it will always be slower. Especially in the workplace. It will be harder. If you think it's hard now, this is the Lord just building skills and experience for you to do it on the next stage. And then the next stage. It'll be the same. Sometimes it's going to be really frustrating just to have a spiritual conversation. Something that you've grown so accustomed to during your time with the Navigators. And I don't say that to discourage you. I say that because I don't want you to throw away all the skills that you have. I say that because I want to see you endure and experience joy to the fullness of what God has for you for the rest of your life. Because it's just like Jim Downing said, the deployment of your giftings to the glory of God is what's going to bring you some of your greatest joys. And I know you know that because you're experiencing it right now here. Have you ever had more fun leading people than you are right now at this program? Influencing people than you are right now at this program? I'm sure some of you are having some crummy experiences too. But I guarantee you at the end of this summer, you're going to look at this and go, man, I learned so much and I had so much fun. And I want that to be on the back end of your life too. I want you to be able to say that. And what you have going for you right now is you have a community to help you do it. So is that a conviction? Do you have a conviction to pursue community to help you pursue your passions? Don't pursue your contribution alone. Don't pursue God solely on your own. God designed us to live, work, and play with other people. It's always more fun with other people. And it's always harder alone. And this is going to look different than it does right now for you too. It's going to look different than it has been with your experience with the Navigators. You guys are so spoiled. The level and depth of your conversations with your peers who are also Navigators are way different than what people are willing to have outside of what your experience is right now. Try to imagine having some of the conversations that you've had this week with some of the people that you've been leading around the water cooler. Probably not going to be an experience that happens in the first 5 weeks of the next summer training program in your life. So it's helpful to have people around you that's going to encourage you toward your callings. Often you're going to go from a tightly integrated social circle like the Navigators to one that's way more compartmentalized. You're going to have your work circles, you're going to have your church circles, you're going to have your outside activities circles. And this guy's not going to know this guy, where it's like right now everybody knows everybody, almost. I mean, for goodness sake, you're going to know people who are on different campuses after this. You're going to have friends in different states. It's going to be way more compartmentalized. And not everybody's going to know everybody. So on top of that, the amount of time that you have to give others will drop dramatically. You'll also find it necessary to embrace and relate to people in different stages of life. Because you're going to be working with people in their 40s. You're going to be working with people who have kids. Right now, you're only communicating with people who are between the ages of 18 to 22 and maybe 26, 27, and 28. That's a pretty limited spectrum of life. And it's going to be difficult. That might be something you don't do much of right now, but you will in the future. And my encouragement is, don't throw away all the principles that you've learned here. Last time I checked, the conversation stack still worked with my non-believing neighbors. You're not laughing, so maybe not all of you know the conversation stack. But I hope you do. That works. You know what? Sharing the gospel works. It really does. Don't forget what you're learning on the beach. You can still have those opportunities in the workplace. That's not what I'm saying. I'm just saying it's going to be a little bit harder. You were designed for contribution to the kingdom of God. Your heart burns for it. I know it does because I was sitting where you're sitting, and my heart still burns for it. And the older I get, the more it burns for it. That contribution fits inside your calling to God Himself, to know Him for yourself, to be in relation with Him. But within that contribution to the world around you is work. your actual occupation, the job that God gives you to do to put bread on the table. And that's what we're going to spend the rest of our time talking about. So think about the job that you have, or rather the job that you want to have after you graduate. And I hope the Navigators is in that list of options of your ideal job. But think about your job after you graduate. You've been working at it for a few years. And Jesus, because he loves you so much, decides to drop in and say hi. And he walks up to your office, which, because all of you are a lot like millennials, when you close your eyes and envision an office, probably what you're envisioning is not a cubicle. It's probably an actual office with a door. And let me just pop that bubble. That's not going to happen for many years. You're probably going to have a cubicle. And so now, like, that bubble's been popped and you're like, oh, so yeah, I'll be like in this space with my own desk. No, there's going to be 3 or 4 other people in the same cubicle. Okay, so Jesus walks in to the 4 of you, and you're the only believer in your cubicle, so you're the only one who's like, hey, Jesus. And Jesus looks you straight in the eye and he's like, how's it going? Tell me about life. What are you going to answer him about your job and what you're experiencing when you envision your job right now? Why don't you turn back to your tables and discuss that? Like, what are you going to tell Jesus about from your experience from your first few years of work, first year of work? What excites you? What are you going to tell Jesus about that you're excited about at work? What are you excited to tell him?
Okay. I'm pursuing a degree in math education, so I would potentially be sharing a classroom, not a cubicle, but a classroom with people. But
Yeah, it's just a classroom. It's a cubicle. It's a really large cubicle with like 30 other people that are like lower than 18 years old.
If Jesus was to come in like after my first year of teaching and ask me like how it's been, like my hopes are that I have identified with Christ with my coworkers, that they're aware, that I'm having or like engaging in spiritual conversations with my coworkers, and not just like this is my classroom, I'm gonna do my thing, but trying to build community with others around me, and like just like share with God like what He's doing in the lives of the students that I'm working with. Yeah.
That's great. What else are you excited about?
I think I'd want to be able to say, like, yeah, these are the guys that come over every Thursday or something for, like, soup and grilled cheese, or we go play basketball with some of the guys, like, at lunchtime or something like that. And, yeah, I'm an ed major too, so just, like, playing with the kids as well.
Okay. So, excited to tell Jesus about the relationships that you're forming.
Mm-hmm. And then just, like, maybe like a Bible study that you invite them to after the soup and grilled cheese.
My hope is to work with human trafficking victims, and so I hope that I get to tell them about all the cool things like how God sees power work through people, because I don't expect large numbers, but I expect to see like massive amounts of this power working in like crazy ways.
Where are you from?
Colorado.
Colorado. Okay.
We were talking about school.
I just originally was wondering where you're from. I have my own reasons for that question. Anyway. It's helpful for me to know where you're from because you feel that that is your calling. So there's specific centers of the world that care more about it than others. So that's why I was curious.
That makes sense.
Great. Did you guys talk to Jesus about work is a great place to grow spiritually? Did you mention that one? Because work's going to grow you like crazy. Because your hopes and dreams are that you're going to have relationships after your first year. And God has this really neat thing where he just takes our dreams and crushes them and replaces them with something else. And that's really good for you. It is. Everybody turn to 1 Peter 2, 18 to 22. 1 Peter 2 is a really great chapter about work. If you want to have a quiet time on work, 1 Peter 2 is choice. Somebody read that for me. 2:18 to 22.
Servants, be subject to your masters with all respect, not only to the good and gentle, but also to the unjust, for this is a gracious thing. When, mindful of God, one endures sorrows while suffering unjustly. For what credit is it if when you sin and are beaten for it, you endure? But if when you do good and suffer for it, you endure, this is a gracious thing in the sight of God. For to this you have been called, because Christ also suffered for you, leaving you an example so that you might follow in his steps. He committed no sin, neither was deceit found in his mouth.
Part of the curse is that work is hard. God cursed the ground. And Adam had to deal with thorns and thistles and all sorts of stuff. And work is going to develop you because it's hard. And God's going to use it to refine you and form you more into his image. And it's when it gets hard that it's really necessary to remind yourself, the Lord is making me more patient. He's making me more grace-filled. He's growing me in integrity, in commitment. You know, those are the kind of things that work draws out. But the hardships are also some of the reasons that people pull the ejection handles and say, oh, what I learned in college is just a college thing. So you're either going to trust that God has purpose for your hardship to refine you and shape you for future contributions, or not. And if it's the not, you'll probably give up. And you'll justify it by saying, that picture that I had in college and how I learned how to do discipleship only works in college, which is a lie from the enemy, because he wants you to not be effective, satisfied, or fruitful. That was a lot heavier than I wanted it to be. I'm sorry, but I feel the need to bring students down in their picture of what is going to happen after college, because it's not what you're envisioning. And I know that from 10 years of working with college students. It's just not. What you're envisioning right now, it's just different. It's not bad. It's different. When you think of a college campus, you guys are in the fast lane. Ministry happens so quick in college. It's like being struck by lightning, because people are coming to know Jesus left and right, and he's changing people. And they're at such a great stage in life where people are really malleable. You might lead someone to the Lord, and it takes you 7 years to get them where you've gotten somebody in a summer. And that's okay. It probably won't take 7 years. I'm exaggerating a little bit. But all of that is good for you, to develop you and grow you spiritually. You got to think about college like a microwave and the workplace like a crock pot. You can nuke something in 2 minutes in college, but it's going to take 6 hours to make a good brisket after. It's a slow cooking process. And I would love to engage with you guys on a more personal level about how that looks if you'd like to get time with me, because I really care about this. But let's keep moving. Work is a great place for natural relational spread of the gospel. You guys were alluding to that. It really is. Did you know that before travel became less expensive because of the invention of the combustion engine and planes, that the only thing that really moved the gospel forward was enterprise, was business, was people with means, because it was so expensive to travel. Only the people who had lots of money could. So they were the ones who carried the gospel places. God designed work to move his kingdom forward. Let's look at 1 Peter 2:12. Just back up a little bit. Somebody read 1 Peter 2:12. Out loud. Anybody.
Keep your conduct among the Gentiles honorable, so that when they speak against you as evildoers, they may see your good deeds and glorify God on the day of visitation.
The lost will see who you are and what you believe and what your convictions are at work. They will see your conduct. And though they might not make sense of it for a few years, they will see your life change. And it will move them closer to the gospel, especially if you share it with them. The gospel, that is, as well as your life. You know, the early missionaries who went into Africa and Asia and China, they were all people of great means. They were people with families that had a lot of wealth. You know how they got all that accumulation of wealth? Work. They were good and gifted at what they did. And they sent their children in their place because they couldn't. Dietrich Bonhoeffer, he was an aristocrat. The son of an aristocrat. The reason he went into seminary and stood up to Hitler is because he had a free ride. The reason he traveled the world is because his parents paid for it. His dad was a doctor, one of the most famous ones in Germany at the time. Work is a means to advance God's kingdom. And his dad was an amazing man too. His dad was a Bible-believing Christian who stood for his faith in the realm of doctoral sciences. We can look at Titus 2, 9 and 10. You can look at that some other time. Let's keep going. How about, did you tell Jesus that work just fits your design? Like, God, it's just so great. I'm doing what I love. Did that enter your mind? Because it could. Everybody go to Genesis 1:26. Somebody read that for me.
Then God said, "Let us make man in our image, according to our likeness, and let them have dominion over the fish of the sea, over the birds of the air, over the cattle, over all the earth, and over every creeping thing that creeps on the earth."
Wait, what was that word you said in there in the first half? It's 4 letters, starts with a W, ends with a K. Yeah, it's work! It's in there! You were created for it! Oh, they're done. Man, I'm trying to think of what I read this in. I may have read it in New Living. That's why I'm thinking of that.
Mine's New King James.
Okay. The work of naming all of the animals and having authority over them, they were designed for that. And they must have been good at it because they dang well named them all. And they raised crops and populated the earth. Over 900 years. It's a long time to be populating the earth, but they did it. That was the job that they were given. He designed them to do just that, and they fulfilled their purpose and their vocation and occupation. And it was satisfying for them. You want to be a teacher? Obviously, there's something about that God has created you to want to be a teacher. And you're probably going to be good at it. Did you tell Jesus about God, I'm making money. And I can like buy stuff and feed myself.
You're a teacher.
That's another aspect of this. We work to get paid and eat, and that enables us to have our vocational contribution. So when you go to work and you're like, man, why am I still making widgets? Why am I managing this stock portfolio? I'm just making money for a bunch of selfish people. Well, it's so you can raise a family and populate this earth with little Jesus followers. It's so you can fund yourself to do all the other things that you're going to do. Like play kickball with your kids in the neighborhood with the other families. Like take a month off work because you can afford it and go to China. Because that's what you're truly passionate about. It's the nations. It's the Great Commission. So you can give to people like Alex. So he can run programs like this. And send out the next generation of world changers. Because that satisfies you and you're good at giving. My mother is really good at giving. I've never met anybody like my mom. She's like, oh, you need $5,000? Here's 7. She doesn't do that for me, but she does that for me. It's like, oh, you want to go to India? I will make a way for you to go to India. And you know what my dad's good at? He's really good at making money. So my mom's really good at giving it away. And my dad's really good at making it. And that could be what satisfies you in life. And you're going to have food on the table so you can do that. So if your job doesn't satisfy you, guess what? It's still fulfilling God's call on your life to do all the other things and all the other ways that you contribute. So when the going gets tough after college, these are the things that you need to remind yourself of. How about this? Did you mention the relationships of work to Jesus? Everybody go, since we're in Genesis, and I skipped the Thessalonians verses, go to 2:18. I hope you don't feel like this is a stretch of Scripture. This is biblical. Somebody read 2:18.
And the Lord God said, it is not good that man should be alone. I will make him a helper comfortable.
Adam needs a coworker to help him do this massive job of naming everything. You're going to have relationships with your coworkers that will be not husband and wife relationships, but you're going to have coworkers that you're going to be able to rub shoulders with and influence. And God's going to use you in that. And He designed it to be that way. If everybody could run a country like the president, well, whatever presidents we have had, that was... Don't read into that. If everybody could just run everything on their own, we wouldn't have any relationships. God designed it so that you would have to work alongside other people. Even the president has a cabinet of like 20 or 30 that helps him make decisions. I promise I'm not talking about any specific president. Well, lastly, did any of you say worship? Did you know that your labor is a form of worship? I'm about to prove it to you. Who knows Galatians 3:23? Anybody have that memorized? Colossians 3:23. Man, I'm on a roll, aren't I? Colossians 3:23. Anybody know that off the top of their head?
Whatever you do, work it well on earth, as it is in heaven.
Yeah, it's like a neat little Christian banner verse. We post it everywhere. And it should be motivating. But let's look at it in context. What are the verses surrounding verse 23?
Horrible masters.
Yeah, it does talk about your masters. We have this and one more verse, and then we're going to be done. So somebody read that for me really quick.
Bondservants, obey in everything those who are your earthly masters, not by way of eye service and people pleasers, but with sincerity of heart, fearing the Lord. Whatever you do, work heartily, as for the Lord and not for men, knowing that from the Lord you will receive the inheritance as your reward. You are serving the Lord Christ.
Colossians 3 is another really great work chapter if you want to have a quiet time. But yeah, there's something about how you serve and the fashion that you do it in that the Lord uses to glorify his name. Because you're doing it unto him, right? So he's worshipped. When you go and you teach 30 students, or when you lean someone back in the dentist chair and work on their teeth, he is worshipped by your work because of how you do it, and more importantly, because of who you carry with you when you do it. Because the blood of Jesus is on you and his spirit is inside of you. And he will use you to influence the people around you. And he's glorified and worshipped through all of those efforts. Every day when you go into work, I hope you're telling yourself, this is my offering to you, and this is my worshipful service to you. And I hope you tell yourself that when the going gets rough, when your relational picture of how you thought you were going to advance the kingdom in your job isn't quite what it is, and you endure with all of those thoughts. Last thing, reason number 7. Tim Keller says one of the main purposes of work is love. Did you think of that one when you were talking to Jesus? In fact, Tim Keller says if you're not working, you're not loving. This is very biblical. Work is a way that you love. Let's go back to 1 Thessalonians 4:11-12. I actually think I skipped this one earlier, so let's go there for the first time. Most people know 11-12, but not everybody takes it in context of verse 9. Somebody start in 9.
Now concerning brotherly love, you have no need for anyone to write to you, for you yourselves have been taught by God to love one another. For that indeed is what you are doing to all the brothers throughout Macedonia. But we urge you, brothers, to do this more and more, and to aspire to live quietly, and to mind your own affairs, and to work with your hands as we have instructed you, so you may walk properly before outsiders and be dependent on no one.
My mom is really good at loving people because she has the means to do it. And my dad, though he does not have the gift of giving, he loves people well in the workplace and is very well respected because of that. And not only that, when my dad opens the door to get into the office, it's a love for him of the Lord. Because he knows he's helping other people put food on the table, and he knows he's caring for other people by leading his business well. And you do the same thing when you go into your office, a classroom. You're assisting in the overall rating for your school, and you're keeping teachers employed. When you go into your factory and make widgets, you make that company possible. When you make sales in your sales job, you make that company have a purpose by allowing it to continue to exist. That's an act of love. And Jesus redeems that with his blood, because it's not an act of love for the rest of the world. It's a selfish consumer mindset. But you don't have to have that as your heart. you can go into the office every day and think, I'm answering the first commandment. I'm loving the Lord with all of my heart, with all of my mind, all of my intellectual prowess. I'm giving to his glory right now as I sit down at my desk and type out my TPS report. And it seems like you're doing it for no reason. But that's not true. That's a lie from the enemy. And I hope you will choose to believe the truth. Well, I'm well over my time, and I'm just going to pray really quick, and then we can transition. Jesus, I pray that you would help us take a holistic picture of what work is. I pray that you would help us refine our individual vocational call. I pray that you would help us understand what our gifting is so that we can commit it to you, so that we can grow it and deploy it for your glory. I pray that you would help us preserve the convictions you have formed in us in our very formative college years. And God, I pray that you would help each person in this room, not just help, but that you would move each person in this room to make a large, satisfying contribution to the kingdom of God over the next 50, 60, 70 years. God, would you glorify your name through these people? And would you change the world through them? I pray this in your name, amen.